We Shall Overcome, written and illustrated by Ophelia Safarati. Martin Luther King Jr. once said during a speech, "We shall overcome." This had to do with segregation. This message was important because the words he said gave people goosebumps. Martin was a gentle person and used words to encourage people to stop Jim Crow laws. He used peaceful words instead of violence. To this day, these words are said and even sung, reminding people to overcome hard times. Don't worry about us till the victory is won. Some of us will lose jobs, but we shall overcome. The Bus Boycott, written and illustrated by Belle Sobrai. A boycott is when you don't buy something. The Montgomery Bus Boycott was a civil rights protest that Black Americans refused to ride city buses. This happened in Montgomery, Alabama. The segregation lasted more than a year. The bus boycott started in 1955 and lasted more than a year. Rosa Parks was a part of protests and famously arrested for not giving up her seat for a white man.
The Children's March, written and illustrated by Kate Ford. Segregation caused Black children and white children to go to school separately. This was unfair because white kids had better schooling than Black kids. Martin saw how unfair this was for these children and organized a march in 1963. Children marched together to protest this. Police officers against civil rights used water cannons and dogs to attack the children and arrested them.
The I Have a Dream speech, written and illustrated by Owen Zorn. The I Have a Dream speech was one of the most famous speeches said by Martin Luther King. It was said during the March on Washington on August 28, 1963, in Washington, D.C., in front of 250,000 people. Dr. King spoke about equal rights for blacks and whites. He said, "I have a dream today that all people could be treated the same no matter what color of the skin."
Civil Rights Act of 1964, written and illustrated by Elisha Rosenfeld. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in equal rights. He was against segregation, so he fought against it. He did it without violence. He was a good and kind man. He made the world better by fighting for what he knew was true. Segregation should end, and he protested this until the Civil Rights Act was signed by President Lyndon Johnson in 1964. This law changed a lot by getting rid of segregation. The Nobel Peace Prize, written and illustrated by Mel Tapo Hasselbeck. In December 1964, Dr. King was given the Nobel Peace Prize. And this award is very important because it means Martin did a lot for peace. The money he won from the prize, he donated to the civil rights movement. He hoped that peace between black and whites would last forever.
March from Selma to Montgomery, written and illustrated by Nicholas Federico. Thousands of people participated in the march from Selma to Montgomery in Alabama. These marches happened because people wanted to protest segregation. They walked 50 miles with Martin Luther King leading. These people were attacked by police for wanting equal rights. The marchers were peacefully protesting but were still attacked.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965. Some black people were not allowed to vote. In the South, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other people who worked for equal rights protested this. They fought with their words and won, because in 1965 the Voting Rights Act was passed. This meant black people could vote along with white people. It was possible because Martin Luther King Jr. marched in many marches.
Martin Luther King assassination, written and illustrated by Kevin Coppola. In April 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was shot on the balcony of his hotel room by James Earl Ray. The hotel was called the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. James liked segregation and did not want it to come to an end. That is why James Earl Ray hurt Martin Luther King Jr. He wanted to stop his message, but it could not be stopped. People still fought for civil rights.
How do we celebrate Martin Luther King? Written and illustrated by Patrick Schneeberger. We celebrate Martin Luther King every year in schools across America by learning about him. We read books and watch videos about his life and what he did for people. President Ronald Reagan signed a law in 1986, making the third Monday of January Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. This makes everyone remember him and his message.